Hello and welcome to the year of being 70 with me, Lisette Schuitenmaker. That's because I'm Dutch. And my friend Lucy McCarraher, who is in the UK. This is our weekly podcast about what we are doing and thinking during this year that we have turned 70.
So, Lisette, we've been told that we could be a bit more organized on our conversations, and that one of the things we should do is possibly start with a question and then tell everybody what we're going to talk about. So we can have a go at that, but I rather suspect we're not going to follow that thing. But anyway, here's the question. How easy is it for women to get their experiences of abuse taken seriously? And the things we think we're going to talk about are how works of fiction can get us all talking about important issues and even make change happen. How workplace and other casual sexism when we were young, what was that like for us? And how much has it changed? And as I said, how women can get their experiences taken seriously.
And this is also because a few weeks ago I went to see the play Facie, however, it is at first sight, right? It is Latin for at first sight.
Yes, I mean it's a legal term in English in England in Britain. I don't actually know what it means by that, but yes, I think we call it prima facie.
Prima facie.
A
Well, I
Latin
saw it in
Latin word.
Dutch, and it's called prima facie, and we don't know how to pronounce it either. Anyway, but it evoked, many memories of having to say no with some force and clarity to men, not so much in the workspace for me, but privately. And you've listened to it, haven't
I
you?
have, yes, we should probably say what it's about. So it's a one-woman show, but it's probably most famous as a one-woman show by Susie Miller, and it's performed by Jodie Comer. And it's about a young female barrister who she defends men from cases of rape in her normal work. And then she gets raped, and then she has to go through the process and realizes that actually the legal process for women being sort of put through this and having to defend themselves and to prove that they were raped is really horrendous and unfair. And I couldn't go and see the show. You told me that you'd seen it, and I was sort of, I've been meaning to do that for ages. But I listened to the audiobook, which is also narrated by Jodie Comer, and I assume it is the same script. But I found it very moving and very powerful. And as you say, it brings up all sorts of, I mean, I would imagine most women have had some experience of unwanted sexual um, harassment.
Attention and,
Yes,
and beyond that.
yeah, and
I think
certainly many people beyond. I mean, I haven't had anything serious happen to me, but in places where I was working in, when I was younger, say 20, my 20s and 30s, there were definitely men who thought it was, and I was married at the time, who thought it was absolutely fine to impose themselves on me, be kind of, think I was available for whatever. I mean, touching, groping, lots of, sexual innuendo, lots of jokes, and that was perhaps more how it was then. It was more acceptable, that kind of thing. Well, I mean, generally acceptable, not necessarily
was it
acceptable.
acceptable or did we accept it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
There's a fine line because when I very much also identified with, here it's Maria Krakman who plays the prima facie. She's
Oh, of
the
course. Yes.
solo woman who does that. And, the first part shows her as this very, very successful 30 something who works in this fancy office and who has one victory after another. And she's on a roll. And, of course, they work hard, they play hard, they drink a lot. And then, they show up and yes, another win. And I could really identify with, I had my company when I was in my early 30s, and I had an office on one of the Amsterdam canals, and I had all that stamina of working a lot and playing a lot. And my employees and us, I mean, we were all these, I would say, quite gorgeous women,
Yeah.
short-skirted, bright-minded, and men were mesmerized. And we kind of played with that. And there was also fun in it. But whenever somebody goes too far with me, and that's private or public, then I cut them off. I cut them off immediately. I don't want any contact anymore. And some of the men don't understand what has happened, but they've crossed my line. And sometimes it's even, I feel energetically, like I feel there's some kind of energy that they are sending my way that is yucky to me.
Yeah.
And I don't want it. And I end the friendship or I end the business engagement.
Well,
Yeah.
you're probably well, you're certainly more firm and rigorous about it than I was, I think, because I often let things pass and said nothing, especially if the men were in a more powerful position than me. And I mean, in a way, it was partly because I was married. If it was somebody who we were working with, and I didn't want to cause a rift, say, between my husband, who was also, my my boss, I suppose, and somebody else in the organization. And I I think I found it, quite difficult to say no. I'd probably be kind of avoiding people, but there were some things that just went on and on and on. I mean, there was an older man who was senior in the workplace who every time, I mean, I really liked him. He was a friend, he was a good friend. But every time we went out to lunch, his hand would be on my leg. I mean, and it just, it was sort of
On your
like,
leg.
yes, on my leg, yes. I
And,
mean,
and what did you do?
nothing, Lisette. I did nothing. I
Really?
just ignored it. I completely ignored it. I know, it's ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, I didn't
Well,
say,
but that's what we're talking about.
yeah,
How, when there is a business relationship and there is a power relationship, how young women, maybe all women, feel they're incapacitated and they can't do anything about it and they have to allow this. That's painful, Lucy.
yes, yes. And there's a sort of, I think women, well, perhaps when I was young, maybe more, but there's a sort of a feeling that you don't want to insult men by telling them that, you don't find them attractive or you don't enjoy their advances. There's that as well. It's very mixed.
Does make me think of when I was really young. I was 17, 18, and I lived in Brussels because I wanted to become an interpreter. I was at the interpreter school. It was quite a lonely time. And there was this man who kind of drove by me and stopped his car and said, "You are the woman of my life. You're it.
Gosh,
I've seen a glimpse. You're it." And I once stood about 2.5 hours around the corner because he was parked in front of my flat.
yeah.
And I didn't want to confront him. And he took me out to dinner and he showed me Brussels and he said, "What's wrong with this? I just want to be with you." But it was like
So you
tough.
allowed him to take you out to dinner. Was this somebody you'd never met before?
Well, that was in the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but I didn't know anyone there. So,
No, 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 of course. No,
yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the problem is men are a threat to women. I mean, that is, I mean,
they
I
are.
forget, I forget who said it. Men fear women laughing at them. Women fear that men are going to kill them. And that's, somewhere deep down, there is that fear that, you are smaller, weaker, than
Which
them.
we are
Which
physically.
we are, yes. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Um, and that's why women are often not confrontational. You kind of try and avoid the situation rather than actually, make things worse.
I didn't know this about the laughter because I met somebody at a conference or so, and I was actually in New York with my partner, And he called me and said, shall we go for lunch? We can go to the museum. And I thought, well, I just landed at a conference, again, I didn't know many people there. So why not? And then we've gone to the museum. And then he said, so now shall we? And I said, what? And he said, well, shall we? And I just laughed. I laughed and laughed. I thought, oh, I am so naive. This is what he has
Yeah.
been building up to. So I didn't so much laugh at him, but he was like, as if I'd struck him,
Yeah.
kind of scurried off.
Yes.
So maybe, laughter is the
Maybe
best
that's
therapy.
maybe that's a way forward. Yes. We've
That's the
we've
way forward.
had currently we have a sort of ongoing scandal of sorts. I mean, we've had lots of scandals recently about men on television, particularly celebrities, all sorts. I mean, famous men who've been in huge positions of power because of their celebrity, because they are they feel, and I think other people make them feel, that they are the one and only person who can do this job. They are essential, to get viewers to make things happen. And obviously that happens in all sorts of areas as well. But it's much more public when it's TV or even and film. And there have been all sorts of different kinds of really very horrendous abuse that has been revealed. And it turns out that lots of people knew about it beforehand. It's been going on a long time.
Yeah.
And nobody said anything, or they might have had a bit of a telling off, or there was a sort of worry about it, but they were not removed from their jobs. They were not sort of taken. Well, they were eventually taken to court, some of them. I mean, and those are in the sort of serious ends of abuse. But there's an ongoing one at the moment, which is just about humiliating, embarrassing sexual chat, sort of behavior that, asking people to do things. I mean, not actually by the sound of it forcing anything to happen, not that severe, but particularly with younger women. And actually, I was really infuriated because one of the people who came forward was this man's ghostwriter. And, so obviously, I work with a lot of ghostwriters, and I would be horrified if one of our team had been subjected to this sort of thing in the process of doing a job, which, as she said, is by its very nature in the background somewhere. You don't have power. You're working for someone to elevate their power, to present them as well as possible. This ghostwriter worked in person with the celebrity, which we never do. We are always online, so safety there. But
Yeah.
this was like 15 years ago it happened, and she never said anything to anybody. And it was disgusting behavior, really. I mean,
And in the play, to come back to the play,
yeah,
she is still the barrister. She kind of uses that. You've never spoken about it, so why do you come out with it now? And, it wasn't such a big deal if you didn't speak about it. And she uses that. And then, of course, when
yes,
the
when
tables
she's
are
defending
turned,
other men, the rapists.
when she's, the one who is getting, the people off the hook.
Yeah,
Yeah. And then, of course, when the tables turn and when it happens to her, and when she does go to the police and makes a case of it, and then I don't remember the exact number, but when she's in court, it's like 731 days after it happened. And so, of course, she is not completely sure what happened. Also, they had drunk quite a lot. It was kind of in the context of, a night out with someone from the office, someone of
yeah,
another class, someone a bit more in a senior position than her. But she did not want it. But did it exactly happen like this or like that? How can you remember, after? And of course, she did a stupid thing. She showered, and
yes.
so all these things that she has used previously. And I think that's also really my impression is that the judiciary system has looked at this. And so this play has brought this in a very clever way to the fore, that, the accused, the perpetrator should, or the accused as the perpetrator. I mean, he's not a perpetrator unless he's convicted, I don't think. But anyway, what's the word? Should also
Yeah.
be heard and should also be questioned.
Yes, but he can choose not to be
Yeah,
because,
so that's wrong.
yeah,
It's
the
really wrong.
prosecution brings the case, and the case is essentially the woman. The woman's
Yeah,
experience is the case, so she has to give her testimony. She
yeah.
could have given it as video testimony and not, I think, be have been cross-questioned, but then that would have been very limited, and the defending barrister would have probably pulled the video to pieces anyway. But he doesn't have to put the male perpetrator in the witness box.
No, that is so strange. And I think that's a really good thing when theater, can open our eyes for things that are just wrong in the system.
Yeah,
I think, what you're describing, we've, of course, here in the Netherlands also had our share of television people, famous people, bullying, harassment, or exacting very high standards, which, then they say, I keep myself to high standards, so I keep everybody to high standards. But I think it's coming into our awareness that it is just not right, that it is not right. So I do hope that people don't keep silent for 15 years and thinking they have to put up with it.
I think the other thing is that it's often enacted on um, young women who are not necessarily secure in their career, and they don't have the wherewithal to, it's too scary to call out some senior man,
Yeah.
because, you're going to be very likely you're going to be the one that loses your job or that is seen as a troublemaker. And
I think that's a very important thing, to be seen as a troublemaker. You're not no longer part of the team because you can't take a joke or you can't take
exactly.
anything. And yeah.
And that, the whole thing about, oh, it's just a joke, it's just banter. It's, I didn't mean anything by it. I mean, they're just, what a prude, what a somebody with no sense of humor. And, how do you argue against that? And if that is the culture generally, and all the men kind of uphold that culture, and the other women also don't want to be seen as, sort of prudish or
Yeah,
trouble.
or lose their job, or
Yeah.
be sidelined.
Exactly. So this man I was talking about made I think he made a big mistake because he put on social media not long ago that he thought that all the complaints were coming from middle class women of a certain age. So he said, I've been working all this time, there have been no complaints, and then suddenly, there's a handful of middle-aged, middle-class women who are having a go at me. And they all, I mean,
Wow.
there's so much kind of pushback on social media by lots of middle class and middle-aged women, but some of them are very senior in TV, they're presenters themselves, and he did it to them, and they didn't feel that they could call him out on it because because of the position they were in. But now somehow there's been a coalescing, there's been several people, and as more people, more women speak out, then and they're women who are now in their power, who are not going to suffer because they're presenters and
Yeah, so
they are
now also
themselves.
their job is quite secure. They can be
Yeah.
secure because they have, made a position for themselves. But there's so many ways in which women can be kind of ridiculed
Yeah.
and patronized and kind of put away as middle class, middle age. I mean, unattractive,
Yes,
unattractive.
yes,
So
exactly.
already that innuendo is there, right?
Yes, yes. I mean, that sort of middle class, middle age suggests, well, undesirable. I wouldn't want you anyway. So, you're probably just having a go at me because, I don't fancy you. It's such a horrible kind of uh, attitude that goes behind that. But what you're actually doing is horrific sort of embarrassment, humiliation, fear mongering among younger women who can't, or they may stand up for themselves and nobody takes any notice of them. They may go to, I don't know, HR or who knows,
I
and
think there are people in place like an ombudsperson or a person of trust that you can go to. I think that's much more, even smaller companies have that.
yeah, I mean there are in certain places, and I mean this is all within the BBC, but this program was made by an independent company, not the BBC. The BBC screened it, and
Yeah.
so the BBC is getting all the flack for it, whether or not I'm sure they deserve some of it, but I'm not sure they deserve all of it. So, with sort of smaller companies, there may be much less, and smaller companies operating on a small margin, their star is their IP, and they
Yeah.
need him. And yeah, so it just becomes a very, I mean, it's sort of it's all tied up with money, it's all tied up with
Yeah.
class, it's all tied up with power, essentially. And
Yes.
but it just, I mean, I just find it really hard to understand why men do this. And I think it is, I'm sure there possibly are women who do this, but it seems to be it seems to be men predominantly. And what
I find it really hard too. So we went to see another play, which was about a woman in the 17th century, which is like Holland's golden age. And we already had conquered or taken Indonesia as colonists. And then there were only men, of course, only sailors and adventurers went there. So then women were shipped out to be vessels of reproduction. And they were called that.
gosh,
And so, the time a ship took to go there would be about 9 months.
yeah,
So there was all these sailors, no land in sight, and then some young women shipped over to be vessels of reproduction. And of course, all that happened to them on that voyage. And so Jos and I saw both plays together, and I said to him afterwards, how I know how that makes me feel because I feel it in my own body, even if it hasn't happened to me, but just a confinement on a ship, nowhere to go.
oh,
You
awful,
know,
yeah.
these strong men who pull the sails up, then pull you down, and what can you do? Um, but how does that make you feel? And he is my love, and he's a gentle man. He's not a gentleman, but he's a gentle man, and he hadn't really thought about it because
No,
he could see how I could identify with, the women, but he couldn't really identify with the men. And um,
no, no, but did he, so he didn't, he wasn't able to cast any light on why they would behave like this, apart from, I suppose,
Well,
being,
that's not a question I really asked, but I felt like I was so perturbed, by both plays, and we saw them like within 3 weeks of one another, both one women shows, both excellent, excellent acting and just wonderful productions, strong women. And so I just wanted to know how it affected him because I was so affected. After Prima Facie, I spent the whole night, remembering men I had pushed away or really held, a strong no. Um, but all that, that energy of no, I don't want this. My body doesn't want this. No. And even I don't want to be kissed by you and I want to go away.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and so that was very much still in my physical body after seeing the play, and he had not been affected by that. And I hope that he can't really identify with people who do that. That's very good, very reassuring to me.
yes, absolutely. Yes, I'm sure. No, I'm sure he can't. I wasn't suggesting that.
Yeah, no, but so I do wonder, I have wondered about other men, how do they, because it's I like feel for all women. So can they feel for all men?
Yes.
And,
I mean, obviously, there's the There's the whole not all men hashtag, which of course is incredibly true. Not all men, probably not most men, but
Yeah.
still an awful lot of men who behave frighteningly, and sometimes with women they know, and sometimes with women they don't know. I mean, when I was probably both times in my 20s, I mean, I have been, I don't know if you have the word flash in Holland, but it means, sexually expose yourself. I mean, twice I've been walking in parks and a man has jumped out in front of me and exposed himself to me. And I don't
Call
think
them, we
that
call them
that
a potlood venter. We call them a pencil seller.
oh,
Isn't that a great word? But it's a horrible
it-
experience. I've never
yeah,
had it.
I know it is. I mean, and it's hard to say why it is so disturbing and frightening. I didn't actually think in either case that they were going to do anything else, but it's just so aggressive and, sort of using your
Yeah.
genitalia as a threat, essentially,
Yeah.
isn't it? I mean, it's just, and it's sort of, it kind of stayed in my head. And well, obviously, I'm still remembering it. It hasn't, those two
After all
times
these years.
hasn't gone away. It's upsetting, and it was frightening and disturbing and so weird. Why? And I've never heard of a woman doing that. I mean, it's perfectly possible that somebody, a woman might go out and expose her breasts to men, but it's not a threat, is it? It's not like,
I was in London for your birthday, and what I saw on the street is women were not exposing, but they came quite close to exposing everything, I would say. Young women. And I was like, wow, this is really, I mean, I used to wear short skirts and tiny tops, but they're taking it to a whole different level. And yeah, no, but I don't think we don't have a word for that either. It's also why this why I love my e-bike. When I come home in the dark, I feel so much more. If there's this route I take and it's a bit more through, a little bushy part there, that I can always, put them on turbo and bike myself out of any situation unless there's seven of them.
Yeah, that sounds great. But I mean, it is a fact that, as a woman, you are constantly on high alert, even if it's, quite soft, especially if you're on your own and there's nobody else around, or it's
Yeah,
dark, or, you're constantly looking
yeah,
for, possible threat. And I love the men who say, if I see a woman walking down the street, I make a conscious effort to go to the other side of the road. I'll take out my phone and pretend I'm talking on it so that I just want them to know that I'm not a threat. And I think that, that is so reassuring that there are men out there who do understand that, and who will take measures to make women feel safer. But
yeah. That is a very sweet example, and I just remember, it takes us into strange situations in a strange city when I'm there by myself and I don't know where to go. Then you start to kind of feel a bit, and then when there's kind of footsteps behind you, I just walked on,
yeah,
and I mean, I even more did not have know where to go. But then to take out your phone and kind of look for directions is like feels so vulnerable when it's
yes.
dark and you're on a street corner and you've kind of wandered into an area where you're not completely sure where you are.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
no, absolutely. I mean, it is taking out your phone and, showing that you're not sure where you are, as you say, is also very
Yeah. It's kind of
vulnerable.
better put your earplugs in and kind of but then still, pretend you're texting. But anyway, but
Yeah,
I also see that I have taken being fearful of uh, a certain type of man or a certain kind of man who would assault me. I've kind of taken it in stride. For me, it is kind of a fact of life. Um,
what do you mean? I mean,
well, I think, life is dangerous.
yeah, yeah,
Life isn't safe. Life is dangerous in many, many ways. When you go on the motorway, it's dangerous. When you cross the street, it's dangerous.
yes, of course.
There's lots of things are dangerous. So men are also kind of dangerous. And so I don't think there will ever be a situation where they're not. And I do think we ought to behave ourselves and in a way, not completely blot out a kind of, eros in the workplace or wherever, but really know where the line is and, enjoy how different we are.
Yes.
But I see that I'm this high alertness that I think I had more. I mean, I had more when I was younger. And so I don't know. I feel very, very safe in Amsterdam. I feel very safe apart from that little part, which I don't need to go there. I can also take another route and then it's actually much more buildings and more people.
Yeah.
Uh,
I do feel safe being older, safer being older.
yeah.
I think,
Yes, so I think so. I don't know whether the city is safer or I am safer because I'm just, not so attractive anymore. Although they might also think, she's vulnerable and she can't.
yeah.
She's 70. What can she do?
Yeah. Yes. Well, there's the question is of whether sort of, well, rape particularly, whether it's about sex or whether it's just about power. I mean, power is,
Yeah,
sort of more, it could be anybody.
yeah,
And, we shouldn't deny that men get raped as well. I mean, the common denominator is that it's men who do it.
yeah.
So yeah.
Mm,
Difficult one. But I mean, just to go back to what we said we'd talk about, I do
yeah.
think it is great that art and fiction can uh, show
Campaign,
yeah,
campaign for us.
exactly.
Absolutely. I think it is a role of art and fiction, especially theater, has always been kind of
Yeah.
a breaker open of awareness, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, recently, this is absolutely nothing to do with sex or violence as such, but recently we have had I don't know if it's reached you at all. I don't suppose it has, but something that we call here the post office scandal, where the post office, our Royal Mail, had some software where a
I've seen
local
that
post.
movie.
Yeah. Oh, you have. Yes, yes. Well, it's a TV series, I think.
Oh, it's a TV series. I thought it was a movie. I saw it in once. It's like Mr. Bates against the post
Yeah,
office.
yeah, that's it. That is. It's a TV series. And that has been, I mean, I just love the fact that I mean, I don't love the fact that it's taken so long to put this terrible, terrible wrong right. But I love the fact that it was actually a piece of art, a piece of acting, a piece of writing on television that has actually forced the government to uh, make, recompense and really
Yeah.
get on with it and bring it to the attention of the public. And, that's
It
what,
was shocking. I mean, the Royal Mail.
yeah,
I want to be able to trust the Royal Mail.
exactly. If
Then
you
they did
trust
this
the
to
right,
these people who were kind of everywhere, scattered over the whole country, and yeah, with these inexplicable losses.
yes. And again, it was all about power and money. They did not want to, the people in power did not want to admit that their mistakes had been made because it would cost them a huge
Yeah.
amount of money to make the
Yeah.
repayments. And the people who had been abused in this scenario were people with no power, no money. They were running small businesses, small post offices in local towns and villages, and had, until they got together.
Until they got together, because that's it. When we get together, we are stronger.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think that, perhaps it's a lesson for women too, for younger women too, to get
Yeah.
together when things are happening, when everybody knows that something bad is happening. You know, excuse me a minute.
Yeah. No, you were with your cold and cough, and yes. No, absolutely. I think that is a very good lesson also. Yeah, that this movie, because we tend, when something awful happens, there is a tendency to kind of hole up in our own little cubicle and kind of think we're the only ones and we failed and we should have been this and done that. And then we kind of make ourselves very alone. Whereas it is, as they say, if a feminine trait, not to what is it, freeze, flee,
Yeah,
or
yes, fight, flight, or freeze.
but to, extend our hands and
Yeah,
find others and say, what can we do together?
yeah, yeah. And in fact, this is what eventually these middle class, middle-aged women were provoked into doing by this infuriating man who yes, sort of
Yeah.
put them together in a group and made them kind of into a force for good. I think he's done himself an absolute load of harm by making everything much worse for himself by trying to pinpoint and belittle the people who did eventually
Yeah.
stand up to him. So yeah, fascinating. Yes, I also watched this week a film on Netflix called Woman of the Hour, which was also it's about a serial killer, I think back in the 70s or 80s, and he went on a TV show which was kind of like a dating show, and and this woman went in and said, I can, I've seen him. It was actually while it was being filmed. He said, I know that he tried to kill me. He's a dangerous person. Nobody would take any notice of her. And eventually, I mean,
Hmm.
he actually killed a lot of women before he was caught. It was a teenage girl. He had this habit of taking women up into the mountains somewhere in America, and she survived some kind of attack from him, and then she tricked him into by saying, "Oh, please don't tell anybody about this. I'd be so embarrassed. Can we go back to your place now?" And he was flattered into taking her back and then stopped off on the route and she ran away and called the police and finally he was
There we go. I
yeah
don't watch movies like that because they
no
make me frightened.
yeah yeah
And I don't want to nourish the fear in me. So
no no
I,
you're right
yeah, yeah, they make me frightened, but good for her. And of course, this was a movie, but it was based on real life,
no
was
no
it?
it was it was a true story
Yeah.
yeah
Yeah.
yeah absolutely depressingly so yes but
So, did we talk about what we were going to talk
I'm
about?
not sure. I'm just trying to look at my notes now. So we were going to talk about how works of fiction can get us talking about important issues. Yes, we've done
We
that.
did.
How easy is it for women to get their experiences of abuse talked about? I think we've sort of talked about that, haven't we?
Difficult, better when we group together.
Yep, yep, absolutely. And whether workplace and casual sexism has got better or worse since we were young. Don't know. Has it changed much at
I
all?
don't have enough data to
No.
really say that. And I have not been in a workplace for a long time. So, I mean, not in a kind of a big corporation or, uh,
No, no, and
yes,
I think if I
no.
no, I mean, I think, if I did, well, it's so unlikely that I would go into one, but I think being older would be a protection. I really do.
Yeah, for us, but that doesn't answer the question
Oh
whether it's
no, whether it's
better for younger
oh
women. I really hope that younger women remember to laugh at the men because obviously you said that's what they're most afraid of, and it takes the whole angle out of the situation. So I once did, and it really worked.
yeah,
And also, it is. I don't want to deny it is painful, it's horrible, you're intimidated, you're discombobulated, you don't know what to do, you lose yourself, you lose your ground, you lose your grounding, and that in itself is a horrible thing.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, goodness,
Well,
on
we'll
that,
speak again next week,
we'll talk
Lucy.
again next week. Yes,
We'll see what we talk about then.
yes, indeed. Okay, Lisette, it's
Okay. See
week.
you then.
Bye.
Bye.